So
no. Because
so
we want an unbiased opinion
no, I'm
here.
gonna tell the terrain of it.
If let me just ask this question, okay? If one of your clients was like me and had a douche flute right here, a vape, all right, and they said, and you saw them, you were sitting in the stand with them,
Yeah.
and they picked it up and puffed on it. All right, would you think that as long, obviously, you're not hunting the spot if it's a bad wind. So if the deer coming straight out in front of you and the wind's blowing that way, is this gonna matter at all?
Okay. So
Friends, okay, and you don't know this guy.
so
That while answering. No, go ahead.
out here, especially like it, there's obviously where you're hunting. But here we try to make sure that it's about as foolproof of a wind as possible. So I probably I wouldn't suggest it, because deer can always
You.
but it should be all right. You know, um,
So
I don't know.
so
It
now
should be all right.
let me tell you where we're sitting is a freaking bowl of a food plot, pretty much. And we're gonna be there in the evening. Temps gonna be
Yeah.
dropping, thermal's gonna be dropping. There's gonna
Yeah.
be like a 2 or 3 mile per hour wind. It ain't gonna be real strong, and it's just all gonna be settling in the food plot.
He gave me one
Yeah,
of
I wouldn't do it
the
then.
on pouches or whatever. He's like,
Is
here,
it,
try one of these. He's like, try one of these. This will do you good. I'm like, it's sitting here burning my lip. He's like, oh, you love that? I'm like, it's burning my lip. I no, I don't like that, you know.
I
But
would.
anyway, yeah. So we're going up there to kill these high fence deer, and
Yeah, you know, they go laughing.
we got to do everything properly. So,
Yeah.
Since they don't like the smell of bacon.
and I'm not even going to get to kill the deer. I'm just going to be the guy holding the camera, and I
Yeah.
can't vape. Like my grandfather would be so disappointed in me. But
I mean, so like, I'm a little conflicted on it because, back in North Carolina, number one, we never hunted the wind growing up, which, that's something I want to get into here a little bit is that I didn't grow up hunting big deer at all. I didn't even really grow up bow hunting a whole lot because we only had like a 2 week archery season and it was way too hot for my dad to get out and be sweating in a deer stand. So we pretty much just gun hunted, and if we saw it, we could shoot it. But then again, every single shot I ever had was under 100 yards. But like you said, we was hunting bowls and creek bottoms and stuff like that. So the wind was always swirling, stuff like that. But
yeah,
uh, out here, it's a whole lot different. So you gotta you gotta do things a bit differently. No, I wouldn't suggest using the vape pen, but then again, if you were hunting with me out here, it probably wouldn't be the end of the world. But I did kill my biggest North Carolina deer wearing blue jeans and a Carhartt jacket after I just changed the oil in my truck.
There
And
you
he was downwind, but he was about 80 yards away, cruising, checking for does. So, that was my biggest North Carolina deer.
Would
So
you say that just because it's so flat out there? Like if it's got a decent wind, it's going. Like it's the sense out of there.
well, I actually, so Trent's kind of seen it where I am. Yes, it is flat compared to most everything east, but we actually are pretty hilly as far as Kansas goes, where we are.
yeah,
Um, so it really isn't as much to do with how flat it is. It has to do with the small amount of trees we have. So I am a firm believer in hunting the edge of everything out here. Any amount of timber we have is a sanctuary for those deer. We do not penetrate very deeply in there. We're hunting the very edge. We try to give them as much territory that they can have unbothered so that we can hold those deer there. We hunt the very edges. We hunt the draws or the tree rows coming out, the creek crossings and stuff like that. But we're hunting the edge. We just don't like pushing in there a whole lot. So the only way that we're hunting a spot is if the wind is blowing out across a wide open field of nothing. Now, granted, the deer will sometimes go way out there across nothing, and sometimes you'll get busted, but 90% of the time they're going to stay in that small strip of timber or creek bottom or whatever, or they're going to stay along the edge, and your scent should be good.
All right. Well, before we get too deep into this, because we're
Okay.
at like 15 minutes deep into this, okay. I want to tell everybody how you and I met, what you're doing on the podcast, what you do. I want to dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit, your background, all that stuff. So this is episode 17 for us.
Yeah.
Either way,
No, 16. I
we'll
think.
figure it out, and Caleb will put it up
I
there
think it's 16.
when he uploads it.
might
It's
be
six,
16.
it's 16 or 17. And for those of you who are watching, Matt reached out to me probably I don't know, 6, 7 months ago, 8 months ago. And we started talking a little bit about Kansas hunting and Mississippi hunting and everything like that. And so I had the privilege of being able to go out there to Kansas, Hillsboro, Kansas, at Final Destination
Mhm.
Outfitters, and got my first Kansas Rio. And that was an experience unlike no other. I mean, we reaped the bird. I mean, I had the gun barrel like right over his right shoulder, and he's like, when I tell me, and when you're ready, I'll just gently follow the left and you bust him. I'm like, go. And he just gently busted him, man.
It's on YouTube.
It
Go
was-
watch it.
yeah.
It's cool.
It's on my
cool.
channel,
It's a
Trent
cool-
Ellis. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
We
it's
killed
a cool shot.
the craziest part about that whole hunt was after that kill, we went to go eat breakfast, a late breakfast.
Yeah.
And your wife is probably 5 miles in front of us or 2 miles in front of us in her car with Hunter. And she calls Matt. She says, hey, I just want to let you know we got gobblers crossing the road onto our deer lease. And he's like, all right, bet. We literally drive 2 minutes and we're like, oh, there they are, turn around. So we flip a U, we turn around, we park on the side of the highway. And because I didn't have a camera then, just got a camera in the mail, just uploaded my first video today with that new camera, so much better.
Yeah.
Didn't have a camera, didn't have mics, and the audio was absolutely garbage. Picture was pretty bad too. But either way, I mean, 15 minutes from the time that you stopped the truck and got out, or 10 minutes from the time you got that Reaper, got your shotgun, and just was like, y'all stay here. So me and John are literally filming on the side of the highway, watching Matt in this field chase this gobbler. The gobblers get out of the picture. We see him sit down, one arm it, boom. I mean, and then 5 minutes later, we're going to breakfast. So
Yeah.
it's the best detour that I've ever been a part of in my life.
Yeah.
But
What was funny about that was the fact that my wife got aggravated that we stopped to kill the turkey, and I'm like, you called me, you told me that there was a turkey where we could kill it, so that's your fault. But as far as that hunt went, that was a pretty cool hunt. I killed a buck off that place a couple of years ago, and I was really hoping in that situation that y'all were going to be able to sit right there by the guardrail and video the whole thing. But that gobbler was a little bit of a sissy, and he decided to go around the corner. But he didn't want to leave the hens, and the hens didn't have a problem with me. So I got within about 20 yards of the hens, and he was out there about 35, 40 and shot. And, right then I had to make a follow-up shot because I was one arming it, and body shot him. So anyway,
you got him down, baby.
I did.
Wow.
Yes,
That's
sir.
2 turkeys in the bed of the truck instead of one. So
For sure.
body, wing, foot, whatever we got to do,
Absolutely.
So Matt, you're originally from North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell us about that. Tell us about growing up in North Carolina and transitioning out to the Midwest.
Yeah. So, growing up in North Carolina, my dad was an extremely avid hunter. Him and my uncle both were very avid hunters. They liked to try to shoot big deer for the area, but they weren't trophy deer by no means. I mean, not in most people's standards today. An 8-point was an 8-point, whether it was a basket racked or 20 inches wide,
Amen.
So it was a good time to be a hunter, you know what I mean? But my dad started carrying me at the age of 3. That was before we had safety harnesses and comfortable stands. My dad, I don't know if y'all ever heard of a tree lounger or not,
Oh
but
yeah.
my dad had tree loungers, and he had a couple of lock-ons, but we mostly hunted out of the tree loungers because they was way more comfortable. But he had an old backpack he would put me in, and I would get on his back and we'd climb up the tree, and he had a rope tied from his belt to my belt. And if one of us went, we were both going. That was that was just it. But he would carry me hunting, and I watched, I don't know how many deer die over the years doing that, but I got a lot of experience just sitting there with him. And then when I was 7 years old, he got me a shotgun, a 20 gauge Rossi youth model, let me shoot my first deer with it. I killed my first deer, turkey, and squirrels, bunch of squirrels, all that first year when I was 7. And from then on, ain't nothing been safe, just growed up. We mostly just did deer hunting. Turkey season was always really hard for us. We'd only get to go once or twice a year because of what my dad did for a living. He was a Baptist pastor, mainly, but he also worked in the pool business. He does a lot of stuff with pools and spas and fountains and stuff like that. So everybody's always trying to get that stuff up and running in the springtime. So turkey season was shot for us most of the time. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience in that, but man, we were after the deer, something fierce. For us, my biggest deer, I don't know if y'all can see him. He's way back there on that back wall, but my
Yeah.
biggest North Carolina deer is a 125-inch deer, so that was a really big deal for us. Anything over 100 was huge. It was going on the wall for sure.
Well, like
Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
I'd be ecstatic. If I killed a
yeah,
125-inch deer every year, every one of them getting mounted,
Yep.
going to the bank, getting along, whatever the case. Yeah.
yeah. Well, funny story about that deer. So we were hunting 40 acres right outside of city limits where we grew up. I mean, you could sit there in the deer stand and hear the football games going on and stuff. It was kind of a cool experience. But
Hey,
my
Matt,
dad,
where are
I'm
you at?
sorry.
Where are you at in North Carolina? Is this like more towards the coast or more like mountains?
So if you know where Raleigh is, it's pretty much right in the middle, but on the south side of the middle, a place called Sanford.
Okay.
Um, and we lived in a smaller community growing up right outside of Sanford. But at this point of the story, I lived in Sanford, and my dad still lived about 15 minutes away, a little place called Johnsonville. But anyway, yeah, it was a cool place to grow up. The family farm that we hunted most of the time was on the Granville Vance County line up near Virginia. So we would have to drive about 2 hours one way to go hunt most of the time until I was 17, I think it was, and we got permission on 40 acres right outside of the city limits there in Sanford. And so, most of my hunting, we didn't, growing up, we didn't do a lot of baiting or anything, even though it was perfectly legal and stuff, because we just couldn't afford to go back and forth to corn everything. And we didn't have cameras until I was 14 or 15 years old. We just hunted cut over crossings and creek crossings and stuff like that. So any deer that came by more than likely was getting shot. My dad would generally hold out for what he called a big buck for the first, I don't know, till right at Thanksgiving, and then he would declare war on them, and then he would kill 4 or 5 at a time, because we had 6 deer tags at the time, and up until about, I think I was 19 years old whenever they stopped letting us kill 4 bucks. At one time we could kill 4 bucks, and then they've since then made it go down to 2, which is the best thing they could have done. But anyway, we would just go to war with them. And but long story short, back to that deer, my dad had made the poor decision when he married my mama to marry her on opening week of rifle season, because he thought he was getting a week-long vacation to go hunting on opening week of rifle season.
Nope.
And not too long after that, my mama shut that down. She said, we're going on our honeymoon or anniversary trip. And so growing up, I never got to hunt opening week of rifle season because of my dad, and it was just something that always irritated me. Well, when I turned 18 years old and we had this 40 acres that we could hunt, I said, I'm going hunting. I legally had my driver's license, my hunting license, everything. And he told me before he left, he said, now don't you kill nothing big now. Well, the biggest buck we had pictures of on the farm come walking by and I shot him. And so he didn't talk to me for about somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks. He just wouldn't even talk about it. And the thing was, I worked for him. I went to church with him. He was my pastor. He just wouldn't even look at me for about 2 weeks.
Preacher wouldn't even talk to his own son. That only happens in the hunting world.
Yes, sir.
Dude,
What made it worse was that was when I was 19. No, I was 18 that year. The next year was my first year ever guiding. So the next year I went to Colorado and guided some elk hunts. And I was out there until the second week of November. And then I came back, after the season was over out there. Snow had done covered all the mountains and stuff. So I came back to North Carolina and I just went to war on the deer because I didn't get to hunt, the whole season up until that point. So I had went and hunted in North Carolina and Virginia, and I had filled all but like one or two of my tags. I had saved one buck tag and I'd saved one doe tag. And all the deer I had killed together might have made 100 inches. It was a bunch of little ones getting shot. But anyway,
you had a bunch of meat.
I'm sorry.
You had a bunch of meat.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'd killed like 7 deer and 6 of them were bucks, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I shot 3 in Virginia and I'd shot 3 in North Carolina. And so I had 1 buck tag left and stuff like that. Anyway, so it was right at Christmas time and I had got tired of dragging deer and cutting deer up. So I was done for the year. But my dad hadn't been but like once or twice. So he said, why don't we go hunting out at the farm and see if we can't shoot a couple of does? There's a bunch of does out there that needs shot. He said, let's just go shoot some does. So we load up and we go out there. And wouldn't you know it, the biggest buck he had on pictures on that year came by, same stand that I killed that one out of. And he was just a little bit smaller. He was an 8-pointer, but I think he scored like 110 or something as an 8. And I shot him. And you talk about mad. He would not talk to me for a month that time. We got pictures, and I'm sitting there holding the deer, just grinning ear to ear, and he's just solid, just mad as he could be. But anyway, so
have you got any more big bucks showing up on camera? I knew you sent me those pictures, those ones. I mean, that one was a freaking stud.
Yeah. I've got a couple that have showed up, but nothing drastic. Like I said, right now I've only got cameras on about half my farms just because of the corn and stuff like that. I'm waiting for them to harvest the corn.
Yeah.
So pretty much right now, the only farms that I've got cameras on are soybean farms. And it's just because I can get in there without, tearing the crop up.
Yeah.
So I go in there and I put out corn and a camera and stuff like that. And also too, some farms just simply don't turn on till later in the year, the bachelor groups and stuff like that. Some farms are historically good and some are historically bad this time of year. So
do y'all plant food plots or that kind of stuff?
Some people do, and I'm not against it. It's just I personally don't do it. I mean, they're surrounded everywhere, especially where we're at. We don't have a lot of cattle ground right here where we hunt. It's pretty much all crops. And so they've got food in every single direction. Yep. I try to protect what cover I've got instead of going in there and knocking trees out to make a food plot. I'd rather leave it cover and let them just eat the food that's already laying there on the ground. So there are some people that do, and I think in certain situations it's good. One of the guys I used to work for out here, he spends a lot of money and time doing it. But what I noticed working for him was that a lot of times the deer would, unless it was a 2 or 3 acre plot, the deer would annihilate it in like a week.
Well,
As soon as that stuff comes up, starts getting green,
yep.
most of the time by November, when most of our hunters are here, it was a dirt plot, you know. So myself, until I get the right piece of property, the right amount of equipment and stuff like that, which, right now I've just got me and a 4-wheeler. So I don't see myself planting food plots just yet.
So I want to ask, you're 28, right?
Yes, sir.
You graduated high school 2014.
Yes, sir.
You're just barely a year under me and Caleb.
No, he's the same as me.
Yeah,
I
but
was
yeah,
14.
but you were born in 96, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You were right there.
95,
You were right there at that cutoff in
Yeah.
95. But
Yeah.
but when you think of outfitters, most people are gonna think an older man,
Yeah.
an older guy in his late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and above. Um, and I know there's a ton of people out there that, especially guys like us, that if they had the opportunity to run an outfitter, you might be like, well, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Oh, for sure.
I know that, yeah, I know by talking to you that's the case. But how do you go about getting into an outfitter, or not getting into one, but like literally like owning one?
Well, I'll kind of start at the beginning, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid growing up, most people, they go to college and they have some idea of what they want to do or whatever. I knew from the time I was 3 years old what I wanted to do, and I've never had hardly any doubts about that. There was a girl in high school that had me thinking I wanted to do something else. But anyway, after that broke off, I decided to get back on the straight and narrow and chase my dream of being a guide and stuff like that. Well, when I was 18, I talked with Fred Eichler. I don't know if y'all know much about him or not, but he owns his own outfit in Colorado, and he's got several hunting TV shows and stuff like that. Well, he came to the Dixie Deer Classic in Raleigh, and I talked with him and I said, what do I need to do to become a hunting guide? And he said, well, you need to learn how to be a basic mechanic, change stuff when it breaks, and take photography and videography. He said, other than that, as long as you know how to hunt and you can talk to people, you can do it. And so, I took a couple semesters at the local college for that. And then, by the time I was 19, I was putting out job applications and stuff like that. What I did was I went to the Dixie Deer Classic and I had a stack of like 50 resumes, and I spent time with every single outfitter. 90% of them told me, no, it's a family run business. We can't afford to hire anybody, yada, yada, yada. And I just spent time with them. I said, well, okay, if you can't hire me, tell me what you're looking for, so that maybe next year I'm your man or whatever. And, most of them really appreciated it. Some of them, just kind of said, not today or whatever. But, a lot of them spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour talking to me. And I ended up getting a job that year with a guy in Colorado doing horseback elk hunts in the White River National Forest. We lived out of army tents on the side of the mountain for 5 months, from the end of July to the second week of November. And that was something that I really think that everybody who wants to do something like that should do, just because, I loved it, but I hated it too. Not getting a hot shower or a hot bath for 3 months straight is a whole nother world. You learn a lot about yourself, completely off the grid, no cell phone service, no way of contacting the outside world besides pen and paper. When the camp cook went down to go get grub every week and bring up the new clients, that was our only connection to the outside world. And I really liked getting to, because that was my first guiding job, getting to meet new people every week, take them out hunting, get to learn what they do for a living, just get to know that person for a week because they're on vacation. and try to get them an elk. Um, and doing it all horseback, just as mountain man as you can get.
Was
Uh,
rifle?
I'm sorry.
Was this rifles or like bow rifles?
So we took one or two bow hunters, and all the rest were muzzleloader or rifle. Unfortunately, we didn't kill a lot. That outfitter wasn't the best of men for taking people. I was green as a gourd, didn't know a whole lot, and so it was one of those deals that I learned a lot of what to do and what not to do on that trip. But nonetheless, it was overall a good experience, and I took a lot away from it. But I realized that while elk hunting was fun, it was not something I wanted to do all year. So I chose to be more on the flatland side of stuff, and so then the next spring I was out here in Kansas. I got a job in Kansas. I didn't know anything about turkey hunting as far as like taking people or anything. Like I said earlier, I'd only been like once a year for a handful of times. I'd been turkey hunting maybe 10 times in my life. And this outfitter out here in Kansas had help wanted on his Instagram. And so I'd sent him a message and said, hey, I really want to get a job. I was thinking for deer. And he goes, well, I don't need any help for deer season. I need help for turkey season. I said, well, I'm not your man. And eventually we kept talking. He said, well, why don't you come out and just video some turkey hunts for me? And he said, I'll pay you $1,000 to come out here for 2 months and video turkey hunts, and I'll let you shoot 2 turkeys while you're here. He said, I'll pay for your room and board, your food, all of that. He said, just come video turkey hunts. Well, I got out here, started helping them, scouting and stuff like that, was picking up some stuff. And the first week of season, he ended up firing one of his guides because the guy was just really making all the clients mad and stuff like that. So he looked at me and said, well, either you can fill his spot or you can go back to North Carolina. And I looked at him. I said, well, I ain't killed my 2 Kansas turkeys yet, so I reckon I'm staying. And I ended up guiding 25 birds that year for him. And so at the end of it, basically what I was doing is I was scouting. I knew where the birds were, and my clients were doing all the calling and doing the turkey hunting. So I learned a lot from my clients that year. But it was a pretty good deal, and he told me I could come back anytime I wanted. And after that, I went to Ohio, did deer up there, North Carolina for deer, bear, turkeys, back to Kansas. Long story short, as far as like getting into guiding, sometimes you got to take the job or the pay that doesn't always seem the best just to get your foot in the door. So for the first year, you may not make any money. Probably the first 3 or 4 years, you're not going to make much money. By about year 4, my dad sat me down at the kitchen table when I had come home for Christmas. And he said, son, when are you going to wake up and get a real job? And, he goes, it's been fun. You've had your fun. It's about time to wake up to reality. And I was like, man, I just don't see it that way. I said, this is something that I feel like if I just keep at it, I'm going to get there. I mean, I was young, didn't have any bills, didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have nothing hardly. So, as long as I could keep myself paid and keep my truck on the road, that's all that mattered to me. And eventually, all that stuff changes. You get a girl, you get married and stuff like that. But as far as starting my own business, I had guided for other people for 8 years before I started my own business. And so I had known enough people because guiding for these other outfitters all over the country in Kansas, Colorado, Ohio, North Carolina, you get to know and befriend people because you see people year after year if you're staying at the same business. I mean, I've had some clients follow me to 3 different outfitters because they're like, hey, I hunted with Matthew over here in North Carolina for swans. I could probably hunt with him in Kansas for turkeys or in Ohio for deer or, now Kansas for deer, whatever. So it's one of those deals that as long as you treat people right, they're going to treat you right. So when I opened my first business, I don't think there was but two people my entire first deer season that I didn't know. They weren't all from the same outfit, but there were people that I had met over the last 8 years, guiding for other people and stuff. Turkeys was a little bit different. You could sell a turkey hunt to just about anybody, but just starting the business was, finding landowners that were willing to work with you and saying, hey, at least this first year, if you'll let me hunt on your property, I'll pay you as soon as season's over, for the property or for the turkeys or deer, or whatever. It worked out really nice for me because I was able to start with turkey season and I already had access to close to, gosh, probably 10,000 acres for turkeys that I could hunt. Out here in Kansas, we were kind of blessed. Most people don't turkey hunt out here, most residents. So they may slit your throat over a deer, but turkeys are a pest to them. They eat their deer corn or, whatever. So, they'll just let you go turkey hunting, and they may charge you a little bit, but it's not bad. So I was able to start with turkeys and find property for deer, and then I was able to sell my deer hunts.
So how long have you been in Kansas, Matt?
So there for several years, I was just coming out for turkey season, but as far as living out here full time, it's 4 years now. I think we're going in the 5th year.
Gotcha.
And that's 4 years of Final Destination Outfitters, right?
No, sir. No, sir. We're going in our 3rd year of Final Destination. I lived out here
so
for,
it's just been 2 years. The past 2 seasons you've
yes.
done.
Yeah.
Dang, that's awesome, man.
Going back to like getting into outfitting, would you say finding access to land since COVID, like 2020, would you say it's harder to find access to land now than it was back then?
I wouldn't say it's any harder out here. Just because, I mean, it's always been hard out here, at least for deer. Everything is different out here. Deer, turkeys, and waterfowl are basically all separate. For turkeys, if I knock on 10 doors, I'm probably going to get 6 to 7 yeses. If I knock on a door for waterfowl out here, day leasing is a big deal because the birds move around so much, so most of the landowners for waterfowl, they're going to charge you, but it's pretty easy to get access for waterfowl. But deer, the 2nd year when I was trying to pick up some extra land for deer, I think I knocked on 100 doors to get 8 yeses.
Wow.
So it's
right there. They do.
Yeah.
They're deer hunters. Yeah.
Yeah. And not a whole lot of residents out here are trophy hunters, but we live in a Mennonite community. So everybody and their brother's cousin hunts deer during our 12-day rifle season. And if it's brown, it's down.
Yeah. Just straight meat hunting.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I want to ask this. I feel like I've always heard in Kansas because it's so open, and there's not just a ton of blocks of woods and stuff. It's just wide open. How many times do you have just random bucks show up during the year that like you ain't seen?
All the time.
It really?
I mean, so last year, me personally, if there are some outfitters that will not hunt, right? They guide and that's it. They don't mix pleasure and business. If I couldn't hunt, I wouldn't do this. So I've got a couple of pieces of my own that I have 3 pieces for me, my wife, my dad, and any family members that draw a tag that want to come out and hunt, they can come hunt. So last year on one of my personal pieces, I got pictures of one of the biggest deer I'd ever seen in my life. Matter of fact, he was so big that I had to Google to see if there was a high fence nearby. It was the first time I've ever had to do that because, he wasn't a clean, typical deer. He was one of those that looks like he come out of a high fence. just trash everywhere, just drop tines and kickers and all kinds of mess. And he came by for 2 nights and just that was it.
Lee.
Did you go hunt? Like, were you there?
Well, no, see, that was the thing. This farm
Oh,
right
no.
here,
Yeah, that night.
That night with a spotlight
Yeah.
and a bag of corn.
Come on, man. You got to
That's
get
right.
on those kinds. I mean, you got to kill those kinds of deer.
I wish the problem with this farm is it's a north wind only farm. It's a creek bottom, and it's if it's not a north wind, you're screwing it up. So
Yeah.
it was the middle of I think it was the latter end of September, 1st of October, and it was just all south winds. And I'm like, I can't even go. I can't even go. Now I did hunt that farm, a little bit later in the year. My wife killed a buck out there, but he just never showed back up.
That's crazy that you got him at that time of year. He had to have been like just switching from, I don't know, from like summer to fall range or something.
Yeah. So what happens is out here in September, usually it's the last week of August, the first week of September, they shed their velvet. And about half of your bucks are going to stay there all year. And the other half are going to move anywhere from 2 miles to 10 miles. And, sometimes they're just passing through for one night and they stop, they see your corn pile, they take a couple of bites, you get pictures and you're like, oh yeah. And then they're gone. That's it, and you never see them deer again.
Oh,
So it's one of those deals that I've had a lot of heartbreaks over stuff like that of deer that, same farm. A couple of weeks after that, buck came through, just gorgeous 10-pointer, and had one big drop tine off his right side, just one single one. And I'm like, man, I'd love to kill that deer. And he came through for one night. That was it. Never got another picture of him. So
it's the same way on our place in Tennessee. It's like this time of year till like mid-September, you might get a buck for one night. And it's like,
yeah,
you're like, oh, I can kill that deer. No, they're leaving.
the rut is the worst. So out here last year, I had a picture of a 12-pointer that I had pictures of on one farm. Matter of fact, it's the same big deer that I sent you pictures of. So he generally stays on one of my southern leases. And I didn't get but a handful of pictures of him last year because he lives about a half mile to the north. Where I'm getting pictures of him is just literally a soybean field. There is 2 hedgerows of about 15-foot tall bushes, and that's it. It's not a place that a deer likes to live, but they'll come and eat. But anyway, this deer lives about a half mile to the north, and I'd get pictures of him just when he passed through. And right after Caitlin, I was sitting in the hospital. Caitlin had just had Hunter, and I'm going through my Tacticam app looking at pictures, and a farm that I've got that's 6 miles north of there. I got pictures of this just giant frame deer, and I'm like, oh my Lord, where did this deer come from? So I'm saving the picture, looking, and the next day I get pictures of that 12-pointer again back down there, and I'm like, wait a minute, that deer, I just looked at that deer, and sure enough, I compared the pictures. He had traveled 6 miles in less than 12 hours. It was just unreal. He just followed a creek bottom, probably following a hot doe, and just went.
That's insane.
It's kind of like all that controversy with the old CJ Alexander buck. It's like, did that buck travel that far from there? Well, I mean, they could,
I've listened religiously to all those podcasts. Every time I've seen his name on something, I listen. And I mean, obviously none of us were sitting there when that went down, but I don't see that it's that big of a controversy because, last year we had a buck that pulled my hair out. He traveled between 4 different farms that were all 4 miles apart.
Yeah.
And he was the same buck. He's got a notch in his ear. We ended up killing him during rifle season. He was a 150-inch 10-pointer, 5-year-old buck. But every time I hunted that deer, I'm 3 people hunting him on 3 different farms, 3 or 4 different farms. And one night he'd be here and one night he'd be over here and just bouncing around. And there was just no pattern, no consistency. He would daylight, but it just never failed. It was always somewhere where we weren't hunting. And And I was like, during rifle season, somebody's going to kill that deer. And thank God it was us and not somebody. I'm not mad at the neighbors if they kill our deer, but it's nice when we get to kill them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So tell us, in the past 2 years, I do want to talk about this for your business because I like you a lot, not in that way, but in a godly way. And I want to kind of, plug your business in on this big time. I mean, you showed me pictures of clients, deer that have killed there. Let me rephrase that to where it makes sense. You've shown me pictures of the deer that your clients have killed with your clients over the last 2 years. And I mean, it's just, for me, it's crazy. I mean, so for an outfitter that's been up for 2 years, because we're not in the third season yet.
Yeah.
What is the biggest deer? I want to know what's the biggest deer that has been killed at Final Destination. And I want to know what the average is. And then I want you to talk about the opportunity rate. What's your opportunity rate and what that means?
Okay.
By the way, for the audience here, not mine and Caleb's. Okay.
Yeah.
For our audience here, if y'all see me get up, if Caleb starts talking and it pans back to him and I'm not sitting here, I'm grilling chicken right now. So we're multitasking and but yeah, anyway. So yeah, hit on that. I want to hear that.
So the biggest deer that we have officially killed with clients and stuff like that has been 160. Lord have mercy. I have to check my records. He was mid to upper 160s. I believe he was a 17 pointer. He was a mainframe 10 pointer with just kickers everywhere. The deer that we really didn't get to hunt but one time, and we killed him the first night we went in there. It was a deer that I had pictures of on 2 different farms, just barely. I'd get a picture of him like once every other week. And none of it really made sense. These farms were only about 1,000 yards apart, but the neighbor owned some ground in between. And so I was like, maybe he's just living just a super tight homebody and he's just living in this one little chunk in between these 2 farms. And so I went to go drive down there one night to try to glass that field. Well, come to find out, he was living in a tree row across the road on another piece of ground that I leased, but I didn't have a stand or a camera on it because I didn't think any deer lived over there. It was just this particular farmer. He owns quite a bit of ground. So I paid to lease just about all his ground, not only for deer, but for turkeys and waterfowl too. So I had no anticipation of this deer living over there. So that afternoon, when I saw him coming across the road from that block of timber, and we're talking about less than 2 acres of trees. I went in there, put out a camera, and the very first night, within like 3 hours, had pictures of him. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. So we went in there, waited till we had a storm come through, and I hung a stand, cleared out a couple shooting lanes, and I had clients coming in like the next day, and they were from Alabama. And the wind was supposed to be blowing like 40 miles an hour the first day of their hunt. And that old boy called the guy that was heading up the group. He said, we're not going to come. And I said, why? He said, well, in Alabama, when the wind's blowing like that, the deer hunker down and they don't move. And I said, well, this is Kansas. If they, if the wind ain't blowing, it's weird out here.
Yeah,
so
it's wide open.
Yeah. These deer are used to it. The wind ain't blowing, it's hard to hunt them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I said, I'm telling you what, there's this giant deer that I've been, because I had been sending this guy pictures of this deer all summer. The few pictures I was getting of him, he's like, that's the deer I want to hunt. Now, I can't promise that to all my clients, but anyway, he was like, man, that's the deer I want to hunt. And all the time I was like, man, he's super sporadic, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I finally figured him out. And now you're going to tell me you're not coming. And I said, if you don't come, I'm going to sit that stand and I'm going to kill a deer. He said, well, I'm coming. If you're that confident about it, I'm coming. So the very first night he shoots that deer, and
Golly.
it was pretty cool.
Hey, let me give you my number real quick. Next time you have that happen, you just call me. I'll be there.
We'll we'll be through. I just want you
Yeah.
to know. Call him over me. We'll be through.
Well, you got to draw the tag.
Get a FaceTime of Caleb like, yeah, this is our boy. Yeah, I'll throw up.
I had to draw the tags first.
That's right. That's right.
I didn't even put
No.
it. I didn't know you had to put it.
We're not going to talk about it. We've already we're not going to talk about that right now. I'm going to get in a bad mood. So
So
that's
our
your
average
here. What's your average, and then what's your opportunity rate look like for people that may want to come out there and hunt with you?
So our average buck is about 152 to 153, if I remember right. Obviously, that means we've killed deer bigger than that, and we've killed deer smaller than that, you know. But I think 8 out of 10, I mean, I'm just throwing a rough number out here, have been between 145 and 155. That's where we really settle in at. You know, we've killed some really nice ones, upper class 160, stuff like that. And then, you know, we've had some smaller ones get shot. But we try to make sure it's a mature deer, you know, I try to stay away from them 3-year-olds, man, because out here you can have a 3-year-old that'll be a 150-inch deer. I have seen some even bigger than that, but you try to get them a little bit older. But then again, too, you got Jimmy from Alabama that he's never seen a 150-inch deer, and that 3-year-old steps
Mississippi.
out. Trent from Mississippi steps out, you know, and that 150-inch deer standing there, it's really hard to tell them no, you know. So, you know, we have a 130-inch minimum, you know. Last year we killed I believe a 7 or an 8-year-old deer that was only a 6-pointer, scored 115. He weighed over 300 pounds. So that tells you anything. I mean, he was definitely a mature deer. But you know, that's our average right there is 150. You know, I get calls from people sometimes that are saying, look, I'm not your average client. I want to kill 160, 170-inch deer. And I'll tell them, look, every year we've got pictures of those caliber deer, 180s. For the last 2 years, I've had pictures of 200-inch deer. Now they're not consistent or what have you. You know, we had one that the neighbors killed, you know, stuff like that. But you know, it's possible. Anything is possible, but our average is 150. So if you're not happy with that, then you need to find somebody else, you know. And
Shoot, I mean, a 200-inch deer is like
That's a freak.
It's a once in a lifetime deer, and then you got to get lucky to kill a deer like that, unless you just get lucky enough to be in a place where he is and you're patterning him. But I mean, that's
absolutely,
that's a freak of a deer.
That's crazy.
Yes.
So and you were telling me when I was in Kansas, your opportunity rate is like 80%. And what constitutes an opportunity at your place?
So the first year we were in business, we only had 3 clients that did not see the shooter buck they were after, and we had 17 people come through. So if I remember right, it's somewhere over 90% that first year. Then last year it was 77% opportunity. And what separates opportunity from success is usually up to the client. Not always, you know, sometimes them deer throw monkey wrenches and things and stuff like that. But what I call an opportunity is a deer within shooting distance, except for archery. Sometimes I mean, 60 yards, if he's within 60 yards, you know, that's close, man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, you know, and they're really
go viral because that's gonna spark some controversy.
Oh yeah,
I look at fly at 60 if it's a freaking 170.
He can bust him at 60, but if I come out there at 60, I mean, I could hit it in the heart, or I could shoot 3 feet over its back, or hit 17 feet in front of it in the dirt. I mean, I'm more comfortable at like 40 but
Me too.
I still practice at out to 80. So those 40 and under shots are so much more easier. But
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like your nerves wouldn't be as bad either because you go to an outfitter knowing you're hunting a premium place. And
Yeah.
I guess it's not as much of a shock to your system when 130, 140, 150, I mean, I don't know. I'm
You see
speaking
a one,
ignorantly
you
because
see a
I've never seen it.
160 or 150,
But
man, it's gonna be.
Yeah,
So, so every year when I send people like the congratulations, you got drawn for your deer tag, here's a gear list and here's things to be ready for. I tell everybody to be ready if they're bringing a bow to be ready for at least 40 yards. Because if you can't make a 40-yard shot, you owe it to yourself and to the deer to be able to do that. Now, our average shot, I've done the math on this. Excuse me, our average shot is 23 yards. So, we've had some last year. I had a guy shoot one at 5 yards. It walked right past his ladder, you know. So our average shot is 23, but be ready for up to 40 because last year we had about 180-inch deer walk by and I told the client that was sitting there, I said, he sometimes will cut this corner. So you need to be ready for 40. And he goes, if he's not under 35, I'm not shooting. And he walked by at like 38 yards and guy never even drew his bow, never picked it up, never nothing. And so, I mean, he's a really good friend of mine. I was in his wedding, he was in mine. So that tells you how close I am to this guy. And I wanted to knock a knot on his head. Love him to death, but he should have shot that deer,
It can't always happen like Chris B, come 15 yards, 185.
Yeah.
It can't always happen like that.
No. So, I tell guys that if they're not that comfortable with longer, if 40 yards or whatever, bring a crossbow, and I know there's a lot of hate on crossbows, but if you're coming on a once in a lifetime trip and, a once in a lifetime deer steps out in front of you, are you going to let your ego keep you from killing that deer? It's going to help you with your accuracy a little bit. That scope's going to help you with your darkness, give you another couple of seconds of legal light that, I mean, hey, it's legal, but you can't see your pins through your peep or whatever, we've all been there and it's still legal light, but he's in a shadow and I can't see my pins, with a crossbow, you can just go ahead and shoot him, So it's just one of those deals that if you're not that confident, just bring a crossbow.
It's also one of those deals that if you do have an ego, well, I shouldn't say it like that, but if you are the guy that you're like, I'm recurve only, I'm compound only, that's it. You can't go to Final Destination and then have a deer walk out at 50 yards or 40 yards and be like, oh, it sucked. I didn't get a shot at a deer. It's like, well, okay, you weren't comfortable at that range with a compound and you refused to use a crossbow. So I appreciate your money, but that's it. Try again next year, maybe get it closer. But you just said that your average shot is at 23 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would say realistically here in the state of Mississippi, all of the bucks that I have shot, with my bow, the furthest one was 25 yards. So it's kind of one of those things you plan for the worst and expect the worst and hope for the best.
Absolutely.
And more than likely, you're going to be met in that gray area right there.
Yep.
But
no, so I mean, and that's last year we had a lot of troubles with wounding deer and missing deer. Last year we had that same buck that I just mentioned, and saying that my buddy he didn't shoot. My dad actually missed that deer about 2 weeks later with the crossbow. It was getting towards legal light towards the end, and he had ranged this one corn stalk out in this field, and the deer was standing by another corn stalk, and he thought it was 40 yards, and it was actually like 32 yards. Shot right over his back,
Dang.
So You know, stuff like that happens, but you know, at the end of the day, all I can do is put them on the deer. You know, we had another guy, you know, great hunter. This dude's killed a lot of really big deer. And he was sitting there, it was the rut, some spikes, and little bucks came chasing a doe through. He was watching them, expecting a big buck to come up in front of him where they were. And he didn't have his bow in his hand. And he got his phone out to video the little bucks, and he heard a grunt, and he turned around, and there was about a 160 standing 20 yards behind him, looking right at him. And so, you know, stuff like that, you know, you can't make it up. Last year, I was really struggling because I was having some major stress over the whole deal of just time after time after time of bucks being so close to be getting killed. You know, even during rifle season, we had a situation with about a 140-inch 8-pointer, giant 8-pointer that was standing 5 yards over the property line and would not come out. And just as he started to walk in, coyote come out in the field and chased him out.
Yeah.
You know,
Golly.
just stuff like that. You know, and the hunter's like, man, he was right there. I could have shot him. You know, kind of goes back to your old video you made during turkey season about being across the property lines. We don't do that, but
That's right.
anyway.
That's
But
right.
yeah, so just stuff like that. You know, if we're hunting him and you see him, man, I'm not going to say that's all I can do, but I can't kill him for you. You know.
Hey, tell us about like, cause you got somewhere to, do you have somewhere to stay there when you come to hunt with you, or what about that?
Yeah, we've got a lodge. Really, it's this two-story car garage that we bought with the house that we turned into a lodge. And it's not the Taj Mahal. You know, it's comfortable though. It keeps you warm and dry. And I call it bunkhouse style because it's one large room with 6 beds in it. So if you're not comfortable
out.
sleeping with, yeah,
Time out. UPS is pulling up. My dog's just to go crazy. Hold on just a second. No, this ain't just your professional hunter. This is just your average. Well, we cook chicken on the podcast.
That's
Okay.
right.
You hear what I'm telling you?
What you got, Matt? What you got that marinated?
Hey, I don't know what. This is Bree has done this.
Smell it.
Oh, it's good.
Smells good.
And when I left a while ago, you were talking about, get back here. You were talking about not being the Taj Mahal. Well, I understand outfitters are supposed to be like, you know, you're relaxing when you're not hunting, but I mean, dude, you're paying all this money to go hunt and kill a big deer. The bunkhouse is for sleeping, you know, getting refueled, man.
Do you have folks that want to be like hunting all day? Cause like, I feel like I like to hunt all day, but do you do that much?
Oh, I try my best to get everyone to do it, at least in November and during rifle season. You know, and sometimes it depends on the farm. You know, there are some farms that are pretty much just early morning and late evening. But if it's the rut, I don't care where you're at. You need to be hunting all day.
That's right.
I have had so many people mess up because they're cold or they hadn't seen a deer in the last 3 hours or whatever and want to come out for lunch. You know, the first year I was in business, I had a husband and wife that were hunting together, and they had not seen a single deer all morning. And they got to be 10:30, 11 o'clock, and they're like, hey, we're hungry. We want to come out for some lunch. And I said, man, it's the rut. It's the first week of November. You need to be in the stand. No, man, we ain't seen nothing all morning. So ultimately it's their vacation, right? So I'm gonna come pick them up, and we carry them out there to the local Mexican restaurant and start making our orders. And my phone goes off. I look down, and it's about a 160-inch deer standing right in front of their camera. And so I showed it to him, and he's like, "Oh, well, we can get this to go. Like, let's go." And I'm like,
It's over.
you can't walk in there.
It's done.
Now, luckily, he did bed back down real close to there, and she didn't kill that deer, but she killed one just as big that evening. But so
she missed an opportunity on 160, and then I mean, it worked out in their favor either way.
Well, the one she killed was just a little bit smaller, but it was still, I mean, it was 154, 155-inch deer. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to complain about that, but yeah, you know,
Dude,
but no.
how many trail cam do you run? A lot of trail cameras or cell cams or whatever?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it depends. Everybody's got a different definition of what a lot is. Right now I own 44, and as soon as we get done with muzzleloader season here in September, I'm going to order somewhere between 10 and 20 more
Cell
uh,
cams?
cell
Those are
cams. Yeah.
all cell
Yeah.
cams.
And so like in the past, pretty much all of my stuff has been right over at Corn Pile, but this year I'm really wanting to change that up and get more on the creek crossings and scrapes and stuff like that. Just because sometimes I feel like, at least last year for sure, I was missing some of these deer that were just hanging up 100 to 200 yards away.
Mhm.
And, you know, this year we're going to have a couple of stands that are not over corn piles. Um, there's obviously there's a lot of debate about corn versus no corn. Is it cheating? Is it, it's legal here, so we do it. I want to try to put every single advantage in my hunter's favor. But I do feel like sometimes it actually can hurt just as much as it helps. Um, More often than not, I'd say 90% of the bucks we kill do not have their nose buried in a corn pile when they get shot. Most of the time, they're downwind of it, scent checking for does.
Who
Uh,
cares if they do?
I
Tell
don't.
you something. When I come out there, I want you to rent a dump truck and pour every bit of your life savings into one field of corn and just dump it. I want them to have a swimming pool size. I want them to be bedding in the corn.
But like you said, like some big bucks, they ain't coming to that corn. Like
Yeah.
except at night, they might come to it, but
Yeah. So this year we're going to kind of switch some of that stuff up a little bit. I've got a really good outfitter friend right down the road, and he doesn't hunt over corn at all. He just hunts, he baits and he runs cameras over the bait sites, but he hunts 100 to 200 yards away from it in that transition area. And, I'm not going to go exclusively to that because some of my farms just don't lay out. I mean, they're either there or they're not. But some of these farms, I am going to switch that up a little bit on. So we'll see how it goes this year. But, I'm definitely not against corn. I'm just wanting to use it smart.
So let me ask you this: slots for this season. Do you have any available, and how much are they? Because I know you do bow, muzzleloader, and gun.
So this year I am fully booked. I even if somebody's got a tag and they've got units drawn and stuff like that, this year we're fully booked. Next year we're about a third of the way booked already. And I've got a couple of people that are already, they don't have a deposit in, but they're already telling me that they're going to buy the preference points so that they can come in 26 already. So yeah, I know. So
how many so I know I was like 5 or 6 to get drawn for archery. What about Kansas? Is it like 1, 2?
So this year it was about 50-50, maybe 60-40, but I mean, it was right in that area if you did not have a preference point of getting drawn. And it also really depends on what units you're putting in for too. So we're kind of lucky. We're in a unit that doesn't give out a lot of tags, but you get 2 units on your tag. And so almost every unit that borders us has 1,500 to 2,000 tags. So we can pull from those units a lot of times and get drawn for the most part. This year I had 42 people apply and 30 got drawn. So, I mean, that's a now,
How,
and a lot of those had preference points too.
how many units are you in? Like as far as your land, how many? Is it more than one?
So we've got land in 2 units.
Okay, I got you.
So
How big are
we're
the units? Would you say like are these like really? Are they big or are they kind of small?
if you look at the map, they're all over the place. There's not any really rhyme or reason. They mostly follow highways and stuff like that. We're mostly in Unit 6, but we now have 7 farms in Unit 15 as well. and we're only 15 minutes away from 14. So I'm trying to pick up some land there as well, but just
So,
haven't.
is that something when you apply for your tag, do you apply for a certain unit or?
Yeah, it's very specific. So you get 4 options. Bless you.
What's up, Hunter?
Hey, hey. You remember Trent? So anyway, you get 4 options with 2 units per option. And if somebody's put down a deposit, they're wanting to hunt with us. From now on, we'll be applying for the tags for everybody. Before this year, we were just letting people, we were sending them instructions and letting them do it. But we had a couple of mistakes happen both last turkey season and last deer season with the draw. So from now on, when you go to book a hunt with us, you're going to send us a $500 deposit. That's for deer, turkey, or waterfowl, all the same. And then when the draw comes, I've got a list of people that I'm going to call and get your card information and stuff like that so that I can apply for the tag for you. So,
If you don't get drawn, what is it, like $50 or like, like as far as?
so if you don't get drawn, they refund you your money. We're really now they've got it where they don't even take your money unless you do get drawn. You're successful.
Gotcha.
But for deer anyway, they're going to still take $27 for that preference point that they're going to give you.
Gotcha.
Because if you don't get drawn this year and you didn't have a preference point, they're going to give you one. Or if you did have a preference point, they're going to give you another one. So every year that you don't get drawn, you get a preference point, and they're going to deduct that $27.50 from that. But everybody that has one preference point last year should have gotten drawn. At least all of my clients did, and every other outfitter I knew, if somebody had a preference point, they were getting drawn.
Yeah. Well, what, and you didn't say how much is like hunts, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Hey, go through turkey, deer, and waterfowl.
Okay. So I like to keep everything as much the same as I can. So for our turkey hunts, they're 3 days, it's $1,500. For waterfowl hunts, we really, really, really push for 3 days. They're $1,500 as well. And then for deer, it's a 5-day hunt, no matter what. We really, well, I say that the opening week of rifle is a 4-day hunt. Then the second week is 5-day hunt. Because we want to give you guys the most opportunity as possible. Moving forward, those hunts are going to be $4,000 per person. They have been 3,500, and everybody that's currently on the books is in for 3,500. But stuff changes, and prices are going up all over the place. Last I checked, I was one of the cheaper outfitters in the state, so I'm trying to just kind of stay competitive.
And what does that buy when you get the hunt? I mean, obviously it gets the hunt, but
yes,
it also pays for lodging and how many meals?
So what we do is we provide like Pop-Tarts, granola bars and stuff like that for breakfast. And then lunch, we've got sandwich meat, hot dogs, or leftovers from the night before. And then supper is a sit down full course meal that my wife fixes. It's all homemade. When you purchase your hunt, for everything but waterfowl, that's me skinning, caping, deboning the animal. And I can do it for taxidermy. If it's a turkey, I can skin it for taxidermy. If it's a deer, whatever you want done, we can do it. For waterfowl, it's $5 a bird. So that's one of those deals. We can have anywhere from 50 to 100 birds dead. That adds up quick. So
okay, I was going to ask you about the $5 a bird, but that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, not every hunt's going to be 100 bird stack or whatever. It's still hunting. That's why we push for 3 days, is because you're going to have some days that just suck. I'm not God. There's still wild animals and stuff like that, but on the good days, you can kill a whole lot of birds real quick. So
Well, Matt, dude, thank you so much for sitting down with us
Yeah.
and getting on here. Y'all, for our listeners and our viewers, Matt is actually an avid viewer and listener of the podcast. I think I actually joked to him the other day, like, well, you hadn't seen all the episodes. Like, no, I've seen every single episode. So we appreciate you on that effort, buddy. But Matt is a great Christian guy. He's got great values. Got an awesome family, awesome place. And like I said, when I was out there in April, I mean, it was insane. I'm definitely coming back. We're not going to talk about how I screwed the pooch, okay, for this season. All right. That was not entirely my fault. That was in God's hands, okay?
Yeah.
But it was still my fault. So, yeah, but man, we're gonna put some pictures on this thing when you're
Yeah.
talking about these deer. So you and I are going to coordinate on that,
Yeah.
and get you to send me some pictures of deer that you have, deer that were in the stories,
Yeah.
and so what's the best way to reach you if you want to go and book a hunt with you?
So the best way is to either message me on Facebook Messenger or Instagram, or I'm not a big on email, but you can email me. My wife will get it if you email us, or you can call me. My phone number is 919-353-0628. And it's not a Kansas number, so that throws a lot of people off. But because I was from North Carolina, grew up there, I've still got a North Carolina number. You can call or text just about any time. Sundays I'm going to be in church, but I'll call you back. That's one of the things is I just want to give the God the glory for everything. If it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be here. I could talk for 4 hours on that. He really helped put all this together. So just want to give him the glory. So that means on Sundays, even though it's legal, we're not hunting. We're going to be in church. I do meet most of my clients on Sunday afternoons between church services and stuff like that, and get them settled in, shoot their guns or their bows, whatever, and then we're going to go back inside and we're going to watch church on the live stream. So, if you're coming here to party and all that, that's fine, but we're going to worship the Lord too while we're at it. So we just try to stay family friendly.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome. Well, man, once again, thank you so much for getting on. I definitely feel like we're cutting it short and we've got to get you back on just to talk more, just your hunting experiences all over the country, because we didn't get to hit on that this time, but you've been all over the country, deer hunting, turkey hunting, guiding, all this kind of stuff. So we're going to get you back on very soon, and where we can dive into more of that. But once again, brother, I appreciate you coming on and doing the podcast with us, man. It's been awesome.
Next time we're going to have to do it in person. So that's for sure. You talk about them small deer in Mississippi. I wouldn't mind coming down there in January, February, shooting some small deer. I'm shooting pretty good ones out here, but I grew up shooting 4-pointers and spikes. So
hey, well, you fit right around here. So you just get in the truck and come on, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. So
well, man, thank you again, and hey, we'll be talking to you soon, brother. Appreciate all of y'all.
Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.